Good evening and welcome to another Omega Insight. Tonight's topic is the search for the invisible forces. This is the only publication that George actually put together. He has written thousands of pages of information that he used through the course of 10 years. He delivered 8 study groups, and then the Monday night workshops. I can't even imagine how many Monday night workshops he delivered. And then, of course, the material that he wrote, a lot of it he put into the classroom. So he never actually published a book, and this is the only one. He printed this himself since he had his own print shop. And he only did, like, I don't even know how many copies he did, but we're coming down to the end of what he had that we would sell in the gift shop. This was an introduction to the second level program. At this time we were doing the Delta programs, so this was in the 90s, and this was written as an introduction to the second level program. And then he just kept doing added pages, and before you know it, he came up with this little book. It's 46 pages long. It's not even that long. But the search for invisible forces essentially is George's philosophy on life. And it gives you an insight into the Omega programs and what we do there. Wanted to share one chapter. It's chapter 4. It's called The Invisible World. And he talks about how there's many levels to us as human being, and of course we know this. There's many levels. There's our physical, emotional, mental, and then we can say spiritual, etc. The physical is the one that we are the most aware of. Obviously we have a physical body, and he gives the correlation to what happens when we have the spiritual aspect of us that is starved. Many of us pay our attention or put our focus on our physical bodies, and make sure that we're fed and exercise, well, hopefully exercise, drink enough water, etc. But what do we do for our our spiritual bodies? And so I just want to mention here, he says, there are millions of people who are dying from a lack of physical food, which is true across the planet, but the spiritually starved pose the biggest danger to our world, because they become the most violent and dangerous of all. Those are the ones who are spiritually starved. In other words, all they do is focus on their physical, emotional, mental, and they do not put any effort into their physical realm. So we're learning that the healthy spirit diet is just as important as well-stocked pantry shelves. That comes from him. He says choosing a healthy diet improves physical health. However, if we monitor our music, our books, our friends, and our spare time, our spiritual health will also improve. A good rule of thumb concerning the food chain is that minerals eat light, planets eat minerals, plants eat minerals, animals eat plants, humans eat plants and animals, and spiritual forces eat humans. If you think about that, the life force within us feeds our spirituality and the spiritual forces above. Thinking beautiful thoughts produces beauty in the universe, and vice versa. When we think angry, upset thoughts, we are feeding that into the universe. Since physical food is not the aim of spiritual beings, the life force in human beings is always at risk and subject to plundering by these forces. They steal the life force where they can, so they must continually be on guard. So again, the concept is to feed our spirituality, our spiritual essence, our spiritual level. It is highly recommended to fill our thinking, even our emotions, as we can elevate the vibrations with positive, caring, loving thoughts, emotions. Meaning, when I meditate and I'm making contact with my, quote, spirit, to channel up those idealistic vibrations of love, compassion, truth, beauty, gratitude. By channeling those up to the spirit, that feeds our spirit, which of course feeds the spiritual realm which we exist in as well. The idea that when we deny or do not feed our spirit, I don't want to say that it makes us angry. It just makes the spirit starved. And when the spirit is starved, it'll feed on anything, um, which causes casualties. So when the spirit is depleted, it's just like thinking about a human being. When a human being is emaciated, they're starved and they're exhausted and they're not making much of a contribution. Everything is an effort. So think about our spirit being starved and emaciated. Therefore, it's not making a great contribution. And this leads us to, I don't know how I say this correctly, if there is a balance of positive and negative energy, a balance of, for lack of a better term, good versus evil, and if my spirit is weakened and emaciated, it is not making a contribution to the positive, beautiful, high vibration energies out there, then the negative energies will surpass and create more negativity in the spiritual realm. Now, when I mention this, of course, this is George's book, and I'm paraphrasing him here. The concept is negative spirits, for lack of a better word, do exist, and they will feed off negative thoughts and vibrations and emotions. The positive spirits, entities, exist as well. In order for us to make a contribution to our spiritual realm on the grand scheme of things, it is essential that I feed my spirit with the positive, healthy food, let's just say. That would be probably the best way for me to say it. I'm stumbling because I don't want to betray what George put forth, and I don't want to disclose it too, because I would highly recommend you read this book. He really does have a lot of good nuggets of information in this book. But I would like to say the idea of feeding our spiritual realm, I wish I could have recorded this, but it makes me think back to the day that George passed away. The moment that he passed away, he opened his eyes, and for 2 weeks he had been in and out of a coma, and his eyes were barely open, but on the day he passed away, his eyes popped fully open, and I was dumbfounded and just awestruck that how brilliant his eyes were. It was like they were glowing. And it made me think about a baby. When a baby is born, those first moments, those baby's eyes are just glowing. And I've always connected the idea that when the baby's eyes are glowing, that's because the spirit has entered into this baby, and that's the closest the spirit is to the physical world. Like, it's the most conjoined they are, and the eyes are brilliant. And so when George was passing, I had that same experience. Like, his spirit was right there in that connection. There was no more physical body left, or he was leaving, and it was right there in his eyes, and it was just glowing. And I just remembered that feeling of being closer to George than I'd ever been, just from that brief moment, because his spirit was so bright. And I feel as though, because George fed his spirit so much positive energy, if we can use that, the food for his spirit was very beneficial throughout his life. His spirit was very strong when he left his body. And I know this sounds odd. You had to have been there to have seen it and to have felt it. If you've ever been around someone who passes without regret and without fear, who is fully embracing the next life, then you know what I mean. That presence was there, and it wasn't trapped in the body. It was all around us. So myself and his granddaughter were sitting there with him, and we both just felt it. And it was like a wave of peace came over us when he finally closed his eyes and let go. That, to me, I think is the greatest picture of feeding our spiritual realm. That robust isn't even the word I'm looking for. That glow, that brilliance that was coming from him. Our spirit is not contained within this body as we assume. Our spirit extends beyond our physical body. And think about this. If your spirit extends beyond your physical body and you're not feeding it healthy, nutritious food for the spirit, food for the soul, they like to say, what is around you and how is that affecting your physical body? Remember, if the energy comes from below down, and if our spirit is weak and malnourished, how is that going to affect our emotions, our mental or emotions, and our physical body? These are things to contemplate and consider, and that is one of the reasons why George wrote this book, In Search for the Invisible Forces, because those forces affect us, and they are invisible. So thank you for joining me this evening. I truly appreciate it. You know, my heart is very tender this week, knowing it's the week that George passed 10 years ago, and how grateful I am that I was able to work side by side with him and have such a beautiful, dynamic relationship and friendship with him, and the honor of being in his life. So I know that this week I'll probably be meditating a little bit more to make some connections with him as much as possible. And I also am aware there's a whole generation of Omega graduates who never met him. And not that I feel sad, but I do hope that I am doing him justice while I'm speaking about him. So again, thank you for joining me this evening. I look forward to seeing you next week. And don't forget, we have an Omega 1 in July. It's July 22nd to the 24th. If you have any friends or family, or if you just want to come back again, that'd be great. Go to our website and sign up for it at Omega Vector, theomegavector.org. Have a beautiful night. Bye now.